Hello there, friends and enemies. 2024 was definitely a year for Yu-Gi-Oh! In my opinion, it's one of the worst years of recent. We saw plenty of pro players sort of leaving the game and moving on to other games like Alestrals. We saw kind of just the overall breakdown of enthusiasm from players based on the archetypes that were released this year and how they interacted with the game, and overall it just kind of felt like this year was dominated mostly by control decks that sort of just made it so that playing the game was just kind of difficult and frustrating. With that being said, I think it's time to go over my yearly thoughts about Yu-Gi-Oh! And sort of the types of decks I built this year, and maybe talk about some other games. So I won't lie, going into 2024, I had a lot of high hopes. It seemed like there were going to be a lot of cool things releasing this last year. Legacy of Destruction was going to bring us in a new archetype based around Yugi's cards, which honestly, Shining Sarcophagus was the thing I was most excited for coming out of 2023. I was incredibly excited to play Shining Sarcophagus, only for my hopes to be dashed by its initial base core being much more expensive than I thought it would be. And I think a lot of people didn't expect that all of the cards were going to be in ultra rare, or most of the cards were going to be in ultra rare rarity or higher. Ultimately, my feeling about this was compounded by the fact that upon buying a box, which is what I usually do, if there's a set that has a good chunk of cards that I really want in it, I will buy a box instead of buying the individual cards. And normally that provides me with pretty good pull rates. I normally get most of the core that I'm trying to build, and upon buying a box of Legacy of Destruction, I pulled nothing. I got no cards that I want. I maybe got 4 cards that I wanted at 1 copy each. It was kind of sad. Being a disappointment as that was, I simply decided that I would just buy singles regardless of how expensive they were. Of course, I have a personal internal limit that I don't go past, so if there was anything past that limit, I was going to have to wait until the cards got cheaper, which of course we all know can take a while, but I was confident that I would be able to make at least a couple archetypes this year. And boy, were there a ton of archetypes, and let's not say a ton. There were quite a few archetypes that I found interest in this year. And unfortunately for me, every archetype that I wanted to build just so happened to be one of the more expensive archetypes of whatever set that they came out in. This ended up in me not really building a lot of new decks this year. The only new deck I really built and really got to be playable was Mimighoul, which honestly I'm pretty happy about. I enjoy Mimighoul and the way that it plays. I think that it's kind of a fun way to look at the way that face downs can work and the way that interacting with your opponent's field can work. Honestly, my biggest upset was not being able to get Shining Sarcophagus. I also did not buy the last set of the year, Crossover Breakers, which was a set that I was really waiting on starting from sort of around the middle of the year, and it just didn't pan out in my favor to be able to get any of the cards from that set. We did get 2 more Rarity Collection sets this year. We got Rarity Collection 2 and Quarter Century Bonanza, both of which are good in their own way. Personally speaking, Rarity Collection 2 was not for me, but I'm not going to say that it was a bad set. I understand that for people that were looking for cards that set released, it was a very good set. Quarter Century Bonanza I thought was a pretty good set. It gave me a bunch of cards that I was hoping for, that I was kind of expecting would get reprints, and I'm really glad that I was able to get those cards from that set. A friend of mine got into Yu-Gi-Oh! This year, and so he wasn't really vibing with the way that Yu-Gi-Oh! Works currently, so what he wanted to do was build decks in singleton format, which if you don't know, is where you can only have one of each card in your deck. You can't have any doubles, triples of any card in your deck. For him, he wanted a deck that was based around Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, so I built him a Dark Magician based deck with some Red Eyes support in it, and for me, I wanted to play Elemental Heroes, so I mainly ran an Elemental Hero deck, but I also ran singletons of some of my other favorite decks like Ursa Arctic, Magic-Key, cards like those. This ended up being pretty fun, and we started playing for a few months. My personal highlight of the year was on Dueling Nexus. I had built a experimental Viacroid deck and ended up one-shotting Tenpai within 3 turns. That was my highlight of the year, especially since Tenpai proved to be one of the decks that really annoyed me this year. I spent a lot less time touching Master Duel this year because of the way that the card game was going. They were introducing new archetypes quicker, and so that gave rise to, Snake Eyes and Tenpai being in the game. We also had the new Yubel support, and Yubel, I think, really was my the deck that disheartened me the most this year. It just kind of felt bad to play, and I understand I'm a casual player, I play decks that people don't normally play, but at least before this year, it felt like I could put a deck together out of an archetype that I wanted to, and I could get somewhere with it, and it just kind of just felt like the new support for Yubel, the Tenpais, all of the decks that had been released this year, just stopped my forward motion with that. Speaking of which, I really like the new Medulce support. I was really happy about it. Another thing I wanted to touch on this year was, I feel like, personally speaking, I was a little confused about the Speed Duel announcement, the announcement that Speed Duel would be ending, that they would stop releasing Speed Duel products. At least from my point of view, when I read the announcement, that's what it sounded like, was that Speed Duel products were ending, that they weren't going to be bringing them in anymore. And then for a month or two later for that to just be reversed by saying, oh hey, there's a new Speed Duel box out, that kind of felt weird. Personally speaking, I don't like Speed Duel. I understand that a lot of people do, and I know that it's kind of probably shooting high in my hopes, but I was really expecting, since we're doing the Rush Duel series dubs, that we would be getting Rush Duel in English this year. I understand that now that we've reached 2025, that is almost an impossibility. I'm gonna keep coping. I like Rush Duel and I think it would benefit a lot, but whatever. Other than that, I did have a lot of fun teaching friends other card games. There was a lot of Alestrals and D-Spirits to be played, and that was a little bit of fun, sort of just getting people into new games, especially people that were interested in Yu-Gi-Oh! That were kind of seeing that there were a lot of sort of upsets in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Sphere this year. Overall, while I think Yu-Gi-Oh! As a game sort of just disappointed me a little bit this year, I don't think that's going to stick. I think there's going to be more opportunities for Yu-Gi-Oh! To feel better, kind of get a little fixed. It seemed like with ban lists this year, they were trying to sort of fix a couple things, and from my perspective at least, that's how it felt, and it seems really good, and it feels really good for Konami to be looking at the game and saying, okay, we've kind of done a bunch of things that people don't like. How do we kind of backtrack a little bit and make the game a little more stable, make people feel a little bit better? I think overall the biggest thing that this year especially showed is that the biggest problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that it is an unbalanced card game. There is no balance of power. If it were a balanced card game, you could feel like you could step into the game with anything and you'd have a fair chance, but that's just kind of not how the game works. I feel like other card games sort of get this a little bit better. Of course, with every game, there's going to be one aspect of it that doesn't necessarily work that well, but I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has more of a power imbalance than it does a balance. Overall, I'm entering 2025 cautiously optimistic. We're going to be getting a new set very, very soon that includes a new archetype called Argo Stars that I'm very excited to see. I'm hoping that I can build like Malice and Rizal this year. It would be nice to especially see Malice and how it works. I am very interested in the idea of doing a Banish Shenanigan deck that is based around Link monsters. So we'll see how it goes. What are your thoughts on 2024? Go ahead and let me know down below. Did you have the same problems I did? Was it a better year for you? How are you feeling about the archetypes and stuff such as that? I know that a lot of people, well, maybe not a lot of people, but people that I knew personally were excited for Tenpai, and then when Tenpai sort of got struck down, they were a little bit upset. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found something to enjoy about this video, and until next time, as always, drink your water.